Welcome to the Bowls Hour, brought to you by Somerset Retirement Villages and Dynasty Apparel. Today we're going to be covering off a number of subjects around nationals, Bowls Hub Aotearoa, some coaching, and the summer of bowls coming up quickly. Alex, where do you want to start with all of this?
I thought it would be remiss of us to have something that's essentially a radio show and not mention the sad passing of Ian Birch, OBE, this morning. He needs no introduction really, but we have published an obituary on our Bowls New Zealand website. He essentially, a whole generation of people in bowls will know him as a bowls commentator on radio and television, but he also ushered in sort of professional bowls in New Zealand, so did a huge amount of work for the sport on all the levels that you can do it in. So I'd just like to acknowledge that sad passing there, and our
big thank you to Ian.
Yeah, and our thoughts with everyone who he's impacted, because he will have made a big difference to people all over the world. So thoughts there. I just thought we'd mention that, and maybe I think in an upcoming Bowls Hour I'd like to talk about him a bit more with some of his friends and see if we can
people
get
who have
an
worked
insight.
close with him and what they did and how they developed the game
so
with him as well.
I would expect that to be an upcoming Bowls Hour. So it's a bit of a somber note, but anyway, we'll start at the beginning and
Good place to start.
and see how it goes.
I'm going to make a comment here quickly.
Yes.
Every time we start somewhere, you say we're going to start at the beginning. Every single time.
Okay.
In my head, I then carry on the song of It's a Very Good Place to Start. When you read, you begin with ABC.
Yeah.
And we're going to leave it there and
Yeah.
see if any of our listeners can give me the next line.
Okay.
Very, very famous movie.
I've got no idea what you're talking about, but we'll continue.
You have no idea. You will know exactly what's happening. So out there, listeners, let's start at the very beginning. A very good place to start. When you read, you begin with ABC. ...
Right.
Fill in the gap.
Cool. I look forward to seeing the
We'll
comments
see
on
how
that.
many people are listening to my jabbering.
That's good stuff. Right, so at the start, Erin, Somerset Nationals.
Yes.
Upcoming. We've got
Yes.
the singles and pairs. They're going to be in the North Harbour, Auckland region.
Yep.
In January. And the entries which we've been asked about are going to open up
When?
late September or early October. It's about getting, to be fair, it's just we want to get the conditions of play sorted first, and then go from there. And there's just a couple of things that need some tweaking. So the entries will open late September, early October. Don't panic. We're definitely going to run the events. It'll be fine.
Love that the community likes to be organised. I think on that point, you could sit there and say, while you're waiting for entries to open, they're going to be run through Bowls Hub Aotearoa. People, please try to remember your passwords.
That would be ideal.
Because if you want to enter, you need to be able to log into your portal and click the event. So maybe take this time to check that your Bowls Hub Aotearoa profile is correct. If you've changed clubs, if you've changed address, any of those bits and pieces, go in, have a look, update it. If you are signing up pairs with your partner, get their profile number, and then we get all the correct information at our end as well. So there's plenty that can be done until those entries open.
Yep, and Bowls Hub Aotearoa is a really good little system. We're quite pleased with how it's developing, Erin. And if anyone has any questions about it, Colin is the man to
and his phone
to
number
go
is.
to. You can find his contact details on the website. Although to be fair, I like our email addresses at Bowls New Zealand. It's simple because our email address is our name. Whoever's first name you want to talk to, and then at bowlsnewzealand.co.nz. So for me, it's Alex at bowlsnewzealand.co.nz, so on and so forth. So
And it's Bowls New Zealand, spelt out.
the full word,
New Zealand, not NZ.
We've been trying to move on for that,
Yeah.
and I must admit I do get twitchy nowadays if I see Bowls New Zealand written down as Bowls NZ, because I like to see it. It just
whole
needs
word.
to be the
Even shortened
the
further
whole
to
word.
BNZ, because people, that's a
Well, then I
bank.
start thinking of the bank and get
Yeah,
very
that's
confused.
not us.
So that's okay.
Yeah.
Interesting to talk about. So Bowls Hub Aotearoa, it'll be used more this year than it was last year, and we are hopeful that we'll have some cool little innovations like live scoring for our national events and post section, and there's some centres, Bowls North Harbour's picked up that system to use, and there's a few other centres around the place, so you can expect as a bowler to see more of it. more often, which is exciting stuff.
And for people who aren't bowlers, who might want to know about scores and competition and that's going on, they don't need to have a Bowls Hub Aotearoa profile, do they? They'll be able to jump onto our website, find our section play, click
absolutely.
that link, and they'll be able to see everything.
Yeah, and it's a results. There's a results portal on Bowls Hub that we will link to. And the cool thing about Bowls Hub, and I've mentioned it before, is it's not static. It doesn't stay like it is. We work with the developers to improve it as time goes on. So even from last year to this year, there have been adjustments made where we said, well, X was an issue. We'd like to do this better. So it's something that's always improving, which is really exciting. Looking forward, I think, for our sport. The other thing I wanted to talk about, Erin, was on a coaching sort of bent to do with what we're calling the Better Bowler coaching modules, which I've probably mentioned before at some point, but essentially what we're doing is we're getting pairings of bowlers, like the one we most recently did was Mike Kernahan and Shannon McElroy last week, to answer about 20 standard questions on bowlsy stuff, like how do you cope with a buffety wind when you're playing if it keeps on blowing your bowl around, or what's your pre-match breakfast, etc. So standard questions of different pairings, and we're putting them together, and we'll make that available to coaches in the next couple of months to sort of distribute amongst their pupils. And who knows, it may be something that maybe if you're a member of Bowls Hub, you can have access to that content. But some exciting stuff coming up over the next season, I think, on that coaching front, and some cool things. Definitely
on the coaching front, with the season fast approaching.
Yes.
Leads us into our next topic.
It does.
It's the Summer of Bowls.
What a segue. So I think it's one of the better initiatives that Bowls New Zealand's had in the last few years. You might have been part of the genesis of it, I think, Erin, the Summer of Bowls calendar.
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit.
So essentially what it is, and you'll have seen it at your club, because are we sending it out this year?
Yeah, we will.
We send it out every year to the clubs. It's a Summer of Bowls calendar, so not only does it have on it events that Bowls New Zealand run, our national events, but your club or centre can apply to us to have your event added to the Summer of Bowls calendar as an official Bowls New Zealand
Summer of Bowls event.
Summer of Bowls event, SOB,
which
is always interesting to see. And it essentially is a recognition that it's quite a big event, and you need to have a minimum amount of money available and a minimum amount of entries.
Yeah.
But it's quite cool, and it's available in a basic form already on the Bowls New Zealand website. So if you go onto a website, it's got something called Calendar. If you click on that, you can see the Summer Bowls events. There's ones coming up, like Stoke's got a couple. There's a Morrinsville Classic coming up as well that's on the Summer Bowls event. We spoke to Kevin Hanson, who's running that on the Bowls Hour a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
A few weeks ago now. I just wanted to bring people's attention to that, I suppose, is if you're looking for an event to play in or trying to plan your season, your upcoming 2022-2023 season, our website has the Summer of Bowls calendar on it already, and there's some really cool stuff there to play in, and you can look forward to seeing a hard copy of that arrive at your club at some stage before the season begins. Anyway, coming up next, or not coming up next, Erin, but before you say who's coming up next, I just wanted to mention that we are going to talk to Alan Griffiths from Nelson, who's done many things, of which we're going to hear some.
So stay with us. We'll be back very soon here on the Bowls Hour. Welcome back to the Bowls Hour, brought to you by Somerset Retirement Villages and Dynasty Apparel. We're now speaking with someone who I'm sure everyone who's ever entered a bowl competition anywhere in this country has probably dealt with at some point, Alan Griffiths. How are you, Alan?
I'm very well, thank you, Erin and Alex. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Excellent. Good to hear. Now, I know you because you've helped us out with, I think in the early days when we brought back Champ of Champs, I'm pretty sure you may have done a little bit of competition administration around that, but you've done a lot more, so why don't you just give us a bit of a rundown?
Well, yes, I actually worked for Bowls New Zealand, of course, for 9 years as the tournament director event manager, so that was really my big involvement with Bowls in New Zealand, I suppose, but locally I've been involved for, I suppose, 45 years or so, I suppose, at clubs and centre, and Yes, but yes, you're just talking about those 4 charity events. I was called back for 1 year to do those.
Yep.
And that was lovely being back and sort of meeting everybody and some of the old faces that I'd known for many years when I worked for Bowls New Zealand.
Absolutely. So you say you've been involved in bowls for 45 years. Can you talk us through, like, what's your first recollection of coming across the sport even before you started?
Well, I traded horticulture actually. I did an apprenticeship for the Waimate Borough Council in South Canterbury, and there was a bowling green in Victoria Park in Waimate where I did most of my apprenticeship. And of course, I got fascinated watching these guys bowling up these brown and black bowls. There's no coloured bowls or anything else, no coloured uniforms. And I think I used to spend half my time instead of clipping edges or raking leaves or whatever, just watching these elderly gentlemen and women playing bowls, and I was quite fascinated by it. But also, my grandmother and my father's side actually played representative bowls from Marlborough. And my grandfather on my mother's side, he and his 3 brothers all played bowls, and I've got a lovely photo of them standing on a granity bowling green down in Wollers. So always knew somewhere along the track that I was going to play after I started watching it, and never regretted it.
Absolutely. So where did you first sign up? What was your first club, Alan?
My first club was the Matai Bowling Club here in Nelson. Excuse me. And it back on to when I worked for the City Council here in Nelson, the City Council nursery backed on to the Matai Bowling Club. And once again, I used to watch across the fence there and see what was going on. And then a lot of the neighbours that lived along the other side of the nursery were sort of following what I was doing in my various sporting careers, like my badminton, my tennis, my running, and this sort of thing. And then they persuaded me that I'd better start bowls before I was too old. So my first coach was Frank Oakley, who was a very good bowler at the Matai Bowling Club. So I joined the Matai Bowling Club when they were still in Bridge Street.
Oh, brilliant! And how did you find bowls in comparison to the other sports that you had participated in? Like, did it differ in many ways?
Well, yeah, when I first started, people said, oh, God, it'll be too slow for you, Griff, you won't be able to handle this. But I think it's a mental application in the fact that, hey, you do get hooked on it because, hey, it's not just a case of throwing this thing up there with the right bias on it and hoping it gets to the right place. You've actually got to think about what you're doing, and it's certainly, you've got to focus on what you're doing, and I still think you've got to be fit to play the sport as well, because the fitter you are, the better your mental application.
I agree on that one.
Absolutely. So
I practice. Because I'm entering the mixed pairs here. Yep. And I've never bowled before, so I'm now practicing. We're learning quickly, but I practiced for a couple of hours the other week, and I have never had more leg muscle pain ever. I have to say, and
very true.
And I used to give Alex a lot of grief when he'd come in after playing bowls in the weekend, and he'd be hobbling around the office, be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I'm like, "You play bowls, you cannot be sore." And I now have to take all those words back, and I will never ever give him grief again because of, like, seriously, I practiced for about 3 hours, and I must have done over 100 lunges. And if you think about going to the gym and lunging that many times, like, yeah,
that makes me feel a lot better.
Absolutely right.
Yeah. However,
and the thing is there, and too, once you get hooked on the sport and you start playing on tournaments that are around 2 or 3, 4 days, or over a week, or going to the nationals or something like that, my God, you've got to be fit, or otherwise your body will fail you.
Oh, exactly. It's a endurance competition is what it is what I've decided.
I've enjoyed
a mental and a physical endurance competition.
Very good, Erin.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Great. That's good stuff. Right, so successes, Alan. So what, if you look back over your career, and we'll talk bowls, the plane of the bowls, but first, is there anything that sticks out to you that you're really proud of having achieved?
Well, over those sort of years, there's a lot of things you sort of think about, and your involvement, and it's from a personal point of view. One of the highlights, of course, was winning the local Super Bowl here when the Super Bowls were still playing, and having to go to the Ned to play in the stadium down there and striking Rowan Murphy in the first round. And but it was over sets in those days, and I managed to take the first 2 sets, which sort of raised a few eyebrows and everything else, but I didn't win the next 2, so I eventually lost. But I think that was one of the highlights. But also another highlight was playing Peter Bellison singles at the Stoke Invitation singles here in Stoke, because I'm a member of the Stoke Club now, but playing Peter there as well. And one of the other things I think in the last 3 or 4 years, something that I was very, very chuffed about was I won the Stoke Club Championship Senior Singles, and that was 30 years after I had won senior singles at the Mai Tai Club. So I was quite chuffed about that, and then also with past some of the players that have been good to me at Stoke, I managed to win my senior gold star. So there's a few things over the years, but also that's for a personal player point, but also was being selected coach for the Nelson Women's Intercentre team in 2003-2004 when they won the National Intercentre. And that included people like Murray Watson, Joe and Val and Gaynor Reid and Barbara McGregor and Betty Heelan, and it was a very special one, being involved with those women, because all very, very good bowlers, and from my point of view, it was just wonderful being involved with them as well.
Absolutely, and there's some, that's the cool thing about bowls, is you can get those pretty special moments, Alan, which I always enjoy hearing about, and like a gold star in any place is pretty special. And also you talk about, I love that people can win singles competitions with reasonably big gaps in between, like 30 years in any sport. That's pretty cool, I think. It's pretty cool to hear.
Well, I suppose, in reality, when you've been playing that long, you sort of, when you first start, you're very competitive about it. You want to win by hook or by crook, and, you really apply yourself. And once you've been playing for that number of years again, you sort of go out there with no sort of great aspirations or whatever. And sometimes, I remember Leon Gage, who was one of the very good bowlers here in the Mai Tai Club in the early days, saying, I keep consistent. Sometimes the door opens, sometimes it doesn't. And you just got to prepare to take it when it opens. And if it doesn't open, well, you just got to accept the losses as well.
Absolutely, and I think that's quite wise. So off the bowling green, and with the sort of all the other things that you can do with bowls that aren't playing them, can you give us a rundown of sort of what you've done in the administration space, Alan?
Well, oh goodness me. Well, it goes back, about the second year I played bowls, I think I got persuaded to go onto the match committee at the Mai Tai Bowling Club, which I did and thoroughly enjoyed, because I'd been involved in sports administration and Harriers and table tennis and badminton and tennis and all that sort of thing. So I've always had an interest in sports administration, so I got involved there, and that carried on for the duration of there. And then when I left the Mai Tai Club and joined the Nelson Bowling Club, which was after about 12 years, I think, they sort of said, he's been involved. And I'd also been involved in the centre at that stage. So I just sort of carried on at Nelson and introduced the Business League Bowls to the Nelson Bowling Club about the second or third year there, because it was a club that was struggling a bit, owned its own property and everything else up behind the cathedral there. And that sort of carried on, and that still carries on. They still play league bowls on a Tuesday night there, the Nelson Club, and there are still people that are playing in that competition that started way back in the days when I was at Nelson. But then it sort of progressed. I suppose I became a Dominion council for Nelson for 5 years, and after the council's situation in Bowls New Zealand sort of was discontinued, I suppose is the word. I had about 5 years as Dominion council. I was also involved in the Region 5, which is Cashmere, Nelson, Buller, West Coast and Marlborough, for a number of years there. I'm still involved to some degree there. I'm still involved with match committee at the Stoke Bowling Club and centre match committee here. So really thoroughly enjoy it. There's you can get a lot out of it. You meet some wonderful people, but it's like all sports. It's the people that you thoroughly enjoy working with, and the others you just sort of kind of bite your tongue sometimes and think, well, hang on, I've got to listen to what they're saying, because maybe I will learn from them as well.
Absolutely. And when you look back over your career in bowls administration, I suppose it's the same question I asked you about your playing career. And apart from the business house, which you've already mentioned, what sticks out to you as moments that you go, that was cool?
Well, what I thoroughly enjoyed in the years that I spent working for Bowls New Zealand, highlights for me were the national secondary schools and the Kitty Hawks. In the secondary schools in those days, of course, you had your regional qualifying. You had your centre qualifying, then your regional, then you went to national playoffs with the 6 regions and whatever. And got played at different centres throughout New Zealand, and just seeing some of those, kids, I suppose you would call them at that stage, although some of them were about 17 or 18, the standard of bowls, and it was just wonderful. And I often remember sort of Kitty Hawks was always played in Pakuranga or Auckland, and seeing people like Nicole Toomey and Mary Ann coming up the path at Pakuranga, just supporting Tim, who was playing then. Nicole wasn't playing at those stages, but now, of course, she's playing for New Zealand. So it was just seeing those young people coming through, which was something very, very special to me, because I thought, hey, this is the future around sports, and so many of those young ones in those select era are now playing for New Zealand or in the squads, and certainly very, very competitive, and they're up there with the best in the country at the moment.
Absolutely. What's it like to have been involved sort of at the genesis of these bowlers' careers, to then see them go on and succeed at national, international events? How does that make you feel?
Oh, it's absolutely wonderful. I mean, it's just seeing, because that they're getting coaching from the right people, and this sort of, the program for Bowls New Zealand's got the coaching and umpiring is very, very good. And, if people listen and learn, and the centres take on board what Bowls New Zealand's doing, hopefully we can continue to get those strong youth coming through. But it's just good to see. And just one comment I'll make there relevant to that: there's a lot of people when I was working for Bowls New Zealand didn't even know I played bowls. And a lot of those young people over the years, when they've seen me actually play, they've come to the invitation events at Stoke or wherever I happen to turn up. Griff, I thought you were just an administrator. I didn't know you played bowls. So that's been very satisfying too. And suddenly there's that there's a bit more respect, I think, in the fact that because you actually play and you do administer, you do know a little bit about the sport.
Absolutely. What are you going to say, Erin?
I was going to say, I'm going to have that. They'll be like, Erin, we didn't know you play bowls. You should have been playing bowls through 5 all this time. I'm like, wow.
When you've won the national mixed pairs.
When I've won the national mixed pairs, yeah.
That's great. That's cool. So I suppose from one end of the spectrum to the other, and I like to ask this of everyone, and everyone has a different answer, but if you look back, or sort of at the bowls world, do you have any idols or any people that you look at and think that's, the job they're doing, or the way in which they conduct themselves is something that I looked up to and try and take notes from?
That's a difficult one. I mean, having been involved as long as I have, I go back to thinking about, seeing David Bryant play, and, absolutely wonderful player. But then I think about locally, we talk about New Zealand, you talk about Rowan Brassey and Peter Dallas and Phil Scotland, and, you can go on and on and on, because we've had some outstanding bowlers, and we certainly do have some outstanding bowlers at the moment. I mean, you talk about Joe and Val, but then you remember Mari Watson-Muncy. I can remember playing with Mari in mixed pairs, but seeing her play at national, and just a wonderful bowler, and I think she was hugely respected worldwide. But Marlene Castle's another one that stands out in my mind. But you go back to those early days of Rosa Ryan and those sort of people, Marlene, Millie Khan, and the Khan girls. I mean, you look at the caliber of some of those people. There's a lot of people through the years that actually stand out to me, and were absolutely a pleasure to watch and a pleasure to be involved with.
Good answer. It's always. I know it's a hard question. That's why I like to ask it. Like I wouldn't want someone to ask me that question. I don't know what my answer would be. But that's why I'm on this side of the interview. And just quickly before we go to the bonus question, I just wanted to talk about and let people know too. You have a wonderful have a good bowls database, Alan, that you still keep up to date, and which is brilliant and sort of forms the backbone for the way we at Bowls New Zealand keep track of who's in line for gold and silver stars and stuff. Where did that come from? Did you start that yourself, or was it part of your role? How did that come about, and what sort of work was it?
Well, I think the basic guts that was there. But then I thought, well, I think it needs to be a bit more detail here and a bit more personal. So, I sort of wanted to get a bit more detail involved in that. And, it did involve a lot of work, but my goodness, there was a lot of cooperation from centres throughout New Zealand where I started updating that and doing that. They were absolutely wonderful, and they understood where I was going and what I was trying to do with it, because it was going to be there for posterity, and it's going to be there for whoever was working at Bowls New Zealand like you guys to carry on. And it's very gratifying to see that, you do that, and it has been acknowledged. But there was a lot of interest. It kept me involved with people, and it was pretty special. And I know that, centres begin to realise that, if they want to keep records there, if they're going to come on and do history for their centres, they need to know a little bit more detail about some of these people. But just while you're talking about Nardovich there's something we haven't talked about that I'm quite chuffed about, and that's the fact that I did become an international umpire, and one of the highlights for me, and I should have mentioned this earlier on, I suppose, was the opportunity to umpire and mark World Championships and be involved in Trans-Tasman World Championships and Asia Pacifics and those things as an umpire. It's a lot of people don't realise just what's involved there and how fit you've actually got to be for that one as well. But, the umpiring coaching is a huge part of our sport, and I think, people that put the time and effort to the administrative side of that too have to be acknowledged.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on that one, Alan. And thank you for talking to us. I blinked and it's been a little while. So, Erin has come up with, and I'll admit it to the listeners, I did forget to come up with a bonus question this week. I've done the last 30 weeks I've thought of one, but this week I didn't. So Erin's come up with a bonus question. I don't even know it.
No.
So she's going to pose it to you now.
So, this morning it felt particularly warm and spring-like, which meant that summer is coming. Last week we spoke about chips.
Yes.
And I've been thinking about chips and dips and how it's a summer thing. And I've opened that up to, Alan, if you were going to a barbecue and you were asked to bring a side or a salad or a something, what is your go-to? What do you take?
I actually quite like seafood salad.
Oh, you're doing the dessert? Yeah, yep.
Yeah, well, it's not so much as dessert. I mean, we quite often have, a like tea or something like that at the club, and, I'll go to the supermarket or something and get one of those pre-mixed seafood salads. Yep. And a lot of people don't think about that. They'll bring all the other sort of things. And,
potato salad or a coleslaw.
Yeah, absolutely. So a seafood salad, I think, is something that always goes down pretty well.
Nice.
I like it.
I like it too, because I would not normally think about that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I'm thinking about seafood salad.
Yeah, exactly. Excellent. Well, thank you. That would go down well. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us, Alan. It's been great. You've got some really, really great stories there, and I reckon that we're going to be coming back to you at some point in the future. I don't think we've given you enough time, but once again, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Alan, as a seafood salad, I did think that he said fresh fruit salad for a second. I was like, I don't normally think about fresh fruit for dessert, but seafood completely out of it.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's a good one. So Alex, the weather is getting warmer.
It is.
It is feeling a little bit spring-like.
Yes.
The flowers are flowering. The trees are leafing. I don't know what the terminology is.
The trees are leafing.
There's a lot of green. There's a lot of green coming out of these twigs, and it's starting to get summery. Mm-hmm. When you go to a barbecue, what is your go-to plate?
I have a great answer for this.
You haven't had time to think about it or research it or consider it?
I bring a carrot salad, and the recipe has been passed down through the generation, so it's important. It's going to sound, you're not going to like the sound of it, Erin, but I promise you it's delicious.
Yes.
You have to, you take boiled carrots, and they're chopped up, and there's tomato sauce, and there are onions, and there's vinegar, and it's all sort of mushed together, and it's really good.
Okay. That does sound really, really interesting. I'm not going to knock it. I'm going to give it a go one day. My go-to is, and this is where I was thinking when Alan said fresh fruit / seafood.
Yes.
I am of the dessert. Because you always end up with like too much coleslaw or too much. Well, there's no such thing as too much potato salad, honestly. I have a real easy cheesecake in bunny ears and quotation marks. A small bottle of cream, a tin of condensed milk, either lemon or lime, or mix it up in both. So you whip your cream, you stir it through your condensed milk, you stir your flavouring through it. You get a packet of ginger nuts.
Yes.
Smash the biscuit container.
Yeah.
Mix it through with some butter. Press that into the bottom of a plate, and then put your goop on top.
Yeah.
Citrus cheesecake.
I agree with that. And also,
you just need biscuits. When you go to the supermarket, it's a real easy thing to do. And if you get caught, it's a very easy thing to do at your host's house. And then you just say it's best to have it fresh.
I love it. That sounds good. And before we go to the ending, before you tell us that we're finished,
yes.
The other suggestion I would give to people who are looking to bring something to a barbecue,
yes.
There's another cheats one. It's not a cheat. Yours isn't a cheats
one.
There's a cheats one you can do. You just have to buy lots of potato salad. I'm probably throw my father under the bus. Buy potato salad from the supermarket, like a big bulk amount, and then you get gherkin, which you chop up and mix through, and then you get it's called salad de beef or salad de boeuf or whatever, something French.
Yeah.
You fry some steak and chop it into bits and pieces and put that through, and you put it in little mounds.
Yes.
And it's like a French potato salad with bits of steak running through.
Oh, that is interesting.
Delicious.
That is.
I've had 200. Yeah, that's my contribution.
Right.
Thank you for that bonus question, Erin. I enjoyed it.
You're welcome. And on that, thank you everyone else for joining us for this episode of the Bowls Hour, the show for all things bowls. If you enjoy listening to this podcast, remember to share it around. We can be found on Facebook every week from 7 p.m, as well as Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, the Bowls New Zealand website, or wherever you get your podcasts. Tune in next week for more talk about everything bowls. Until then, roll on.